What topics of discussion are the most interesting to us? What subjects that we discuss among our friends and family seek to energize us and captivate our attention? Is it hobbies or work or politics or sports? Our gospel today speaks of a most important topic, one that we have now heard about. This is the third consecutive Sunday. And it's one that should be of the highest interest to us: the healing power of Christ. For the third time now in the Gospel of Mark, in chapter 1, Jesus heals someone. Today he heals the leper. Remember, in the minds of the people of that time, physical sickness of all sorts meant that the person was also guilty of some sin or some spiritual illness. And so leprosy was the most significant of all of these. We heard that reference in our first reading from the book of Leviticus. The leper was rendered ritually unclean, and so he could not participate in any way in the religious life of the people. So he was a total outcast. But Christ heals him immediately. He is made clean. He is fully restored to a total physical and spiritual well-being. And then Jesus says something in that gospel that is quite curious, something he will say often in this gospel: go and tell no one. Again, it's repeated throughout the Gospel of Mark, and scholars see this as an identifying characteristic of this gospel. It's called the messianic secret. Why does Jesus do this? One explanation is so that the people will not misunderstand who he is. His desire is to reveal himself to the people of that time in an incremental way. He cannot bluntly announce who that he is. That'll be too much for them to comprehend. But he wants to show them his power and reveal his identity to them in a very detailed and slow and deliberate way. And he still wishes to do that same thing for each of us. So many folks will come to me at various times to discuss struggles and difficulties that they're having, and they oftentimes lament, why doesn't God just, make his will known to me in a clear way? Why doesn't he just speak to me? But I think part of that, and is the same as in this messianic secret, he respects our freedom, and he only wants to very gently invite us to this deeper relationship with him. He is with us here and now. Maybe not in that same visible way that he was in the gospel scene, but still, and with the same healing power. He doesn't speak to us in an audible voice, but still, he speaks to us each day in the gentle urgings of our heart, in the clear insights of our conscience. He does it differently than he did when he walked the earth, but no less powerfully. He always wants to fill us with his healing and his grace. We encounter Christ here, just as the leper did. And all he wants to do is the same thing he did to him, to touch us, to strengthen us, and to heal us. And he is the only one who can do it. I think all of us were touched and saddens our hearts aching again as we heard of that murder this week of the young woman on the Millersville University campus. Another senseless act of violence in our community. But as I read the articles in the newspaper as they proceeded in that week, I was almost equally struck, of course in a different way, but by the headline of the Lancashire newspaper on Wednesday morning. It read, "Grieving students turn to each other." I thought it troubling because I think it speaks to a misplaced hope. It speaks of a failure of our society that repeatedly tries to eliminate God from our discourse, and it so leaves us only to ourselves. And to what that will always lead us, to an emptiness, to the lack of true answers that can guide us through our grief. For that grief and all of our sicknesses will not be overcome by one another. It can't be. It can only be overcome in Christ. What did the leper do after he was healed? Despite Jesus telling him not to tell anyone, he went about and he publicized the whole matter. And I think this is what we need to do each day in our community, in our society. We need to publicize our faith. We need to speak positively as what occurs here for each of us each week in our encounter with the risen Christ here in this Holy Eucharist. We need to be energized and enthusiastic about the truth of God's healing power so that each of us and all around us who suffer so much may know that healing. St. Paul in our second reading tells us that whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. This is our call and this is our mission, that we might be agents to others of God's grace. Certainly to those whom we love, don't we want them to be filled with every true happiness and success? And even with all, don't we want them to know the healing and the peace of Christ, which is more precious than anything we could ever have? So as we come here to this wondrous encounter with Christ in this Holy Eucharist, let us only be filled more and more each time with awe and wonder. Let us strive to be aware of his continuing presence among us, to realize that, yes, he won't come to us in a clear and audible voice, but he will and he does speak to us and touch us in every situation of every day. And then let us be like the healed leper, publicizing this matter, so that like St. Paul, we might do all things, always and only for the greater glory of God.